Today on the Conzo Show, we are joined by my good friend Jack Winston. Jack is the co-founder of BePresent, one of my favorite screen time digital wellness apps. I got introduced to Jack probably around 6 months ago, and ever since we've just been constantly jamming on a bunch of different ideas about, one, how to keep people off technology, but two, how the advancements of technology will impact the way that we live, that we work, that we connect with people. So Jack, thanks for joining. I'm pumped to get into this conversation.
What's up, Randy? Thanks for having me. I'm pumped as well.
So I think we can start by you can just give a high level overview of what Be Present is. I know you started this probably now around 2.5 years ago almost. So even if
Yeah.
you want to walk through what that evolution looked like, and then also what even brought you to start that in the first place.
Yeah. So, like you said, BePresent, it's a screen time app that helps people develop a healthy, intentional relationship with their phone. Kind of our take on it is, instead of those time limits that you just ignore, we turn staying off your phone into a game that you can play with friends, kind of combining like the, typical app locker stuff with gamification and social competition, like streaks, leaderboards, and even some real life rewards, basically to motivate you and use those same psychological tricks as social media, but to reduce screen time and just be intentional with your phone. It's not just all about like making it as frustrating as possible, but like trying to make you think and be aware of your actual usage. Yeah, wow, it's been 2.5 years at this point. Time has absolutely flown. It's been a little less than 2.5 years, but like coming up on that at this point. And yeah, so I mean, I started the company with my brother actually, and it's super personal problem for us. We were kind of the first generation to like grow up with Instagram in high school. And so it's always been a problem for us, and we've tried many different things in the past to really help break the addiction to social media, and nothing really worked for us. And it was that realization that like it's not an accident that we're addicted to our phones. Like social media companies use powerful psychological techniques to keep us constantly engaged. They spend billions of dollars just optimizing the amount of time that we spend. And that's why self control doesn't really work. Time limits don't really work. And so, for us, developing a healthy relationship with our phone was the single best thing that we ever did. It was just really difficult for us. And so then when we talked, we basically did customer discovery, talked with hundreds of people, and, we kept hearing the same thing over and over again. Like, I recognize this is a problem in my life. I've tried to solve it before, but nothing I do works. And so combined with our personal experience of like, what does a healthy relationship with technology lead you to? And I can get more into like what that meant for me, but the value there, and then also the market, of the size of the opportunity, and then also the fact that there was already a pull for the market. We decided to go all in and solve the problem full time. Yeah, about 2 years ago.
That's awesome. I think everyone who I've spoken to who's building in this space in some capacity, even if it's purely just from a content creation standpoint, it's generally come from a like their own realization with their relationship with tech
Yeah.
and trying to fix it in some capacity on their own, and then speaking to more people around them, and noticing, like you said, the size of the TAM, the size of the amount of people who are seeking some type of product, services, content for that. I'm curious, in your own life, when you were trying to, Be Present didn't exist yet, you might have been using
Yeah.
different apps, tactics. If you were to develop kind of this curriculum for someone who's looking to make that change in their lives, where they're starting, let's say it was started teaching in school, and even after as an adult, what would that be?
We can get into specifics, but I think the most high level important thing to understand is to create that mental model and that straight line between how your interaction with technology is impacting the daily life that you have and the symptoms that you have. Like, for instance, we're taught about nutrition at an early age, and we kind of are able to make that mental model that when we eat a cheeseburger from McDonald's and then feel lethargic afterwards, it's because we ate, bad food. And once I dove into the research, understanding how, scrolling elicits a tremendous amount of dopamine, like the dopamine feedback loop, and how that really impacts motivation, and happiness, and all these different types of things. I was able to draw a direct line between my social media addiction and how I was feeling in my daily life, my anxiety, the fact that I wasn't present, my reaction, like how I was reactive every day instead of being proactive. And that was the first step that actually allowed me to like become motivated to make a change. And I understood the cause and effect there, and create that mental model between what I do in my everyday life and how it impacts me. So from a high level, like, I think there's different ways to explore this, but it's just understanding that, the research behind how this interaction with technology impacts us.
100%. Yeah, there's a few frameworks, kind of core principles that I think of. One is tying it back to the rocks, pebbles, kind of the core priorities in your life, and making sure that at the end of the day, you're putting all of your effort and your energy into those core things, whether that's relationships, personal health, career. And then after you've done that, like if you ask yourself at the end of the night saying, hey, did I accomplish all the things that I wanted to push those things forward? Then it's when I use my technology for periods of relaxation, do I truly feel relaxed? Because if
Mm-hmm.
you don't and you're leaving it feeling worse than when you started, and then you continue to go back to it day after day, that's where there's a real problem. And I think if you framed that in any context other than technology, you'd be like, oh shit, like this is something that I really need to fix, and it's actually detrimental to our lives. But because of the way that it's so ingrained, and because we lack a lot of the quantifiable metrics, especially from the health side of things, like you mentioned with
Yeah.
the cheeseburger, you know that it makes you feel lethargic. You know how it impacts your glucose levels and all these other things. We don't have that with smartphones yet. And I know that's something that we've talked about before too.
100%. And a lot of it's really just awareness. Like it's not intuitive that if you eat crappy TV dinners that that's bad for your health and that that's why you feel lethargic. Because we all did that in the 50s and we had just no idea that it was actually bad for you. But once you get that awareness, you're able to actually draw the distinctions and draw the lines and connect the dots. And I think one of the reasons why we have such a problem with this, in today's day and age, is that we kind of grew up, or even if we didn't grow up with it, but we all kind of sleptwalk into this. We did not know what we were really signing up for. We did not know the impacts. And we all developed bad habits because we didn't know that we had to develop good habits, basically. And so I think part of this whole reckoning, like my kind of vision is that in the future, like this whole digital wellness space is going to be the same as like nutrition or physical exercise or mental health will just be like another pillar of like holistic health and wellness because what we do online impacts us profoundly, neurochemistry wise, but also socially, like how we spend our time, like if we feel fulfilled in the day. And we're all kind of reckoning with what that actually looks like and trying to figure out truthfully, like what are the things to optimize, because I think it's still a very open question of like, what is a healthy relationship with technology? Right now we have this metric screen time, but I kind of think of it as like calories. It's like an interesting proxy, but it doesn't tell the whole story. Like, what do those calories actually look like, and how
Mm-hmm.
does it impact your physiology?
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And I think too, especially for ambitious people, when ambitious people who tend to, tackle their health and they tackle their relationships and they're really great in their career and they're kind of pushing all these balls forward, spending less time on their phone, I think for a lot of them, they view that as being at odds with all of those other buckets.
Yeah,
And that's something that, even though from a physiological perspective, a neuroscience perspective, you probably are actually adding years onto your life by, or, definitely not taking away years from your life by putting those positive habits in place. But people only tie it to like, oh, if I need to be on social media for work or meeting this person or whatever that may be, then I can't quit it altogether. And I just need there's no balance in between. It's or just like all or nothing. And I think
yeah,
that now people are starting only recently with a lot of the discourse in the just like broader internet sphere. And I think the Masters having the no phones this weekend like helped have another kind of push of that into the culture. But only now people are starting to really think about digital wellness as this broader, like cohesive piece of the puzzle.
yeah, definitely. And I think ambitious people have struggled with this in many different areas. I have a affirmation that I say to myself. I try to do it every morning. Not always great about it, but I say to myself, like, my physical and mental health is not separate from my success as an entrepreneur because I went through a period, like my relationship with technology and that reckoning happened within a broader kind of reassessment of my life around my relationships, my relationship with alcohol, my relationship with food, my relationship with working out, all that type of stuff. And it's recognizing, I think a lot of ambitious people can get into a one track mind of like optimization, like hyper focus, hyper optimization in the short term, but recognizing that as humans, we kind of need, a broader balance in all areas of our life. And technology is a huge one. It was one of the most impactful ones for me, but there's other ones as well that a lot of people ignore.
Totally. Why do you think that despite everyone kind of collectively agreeing that too much excessive tech is bad, there isn't as much investment, excitement, general awareness about the digital wellness industry? I think that the digital wellness itself is like not nearly sexy enough and I kind of hate it. I don't know what the better
Yeah,
term
we'll
is, but
see
like
what the term becomes.
yeah, why do you
Um,
think that though?
I think it's just new. I think most people, are just caught up in their day to day life, right? Like it takes a few innovative people to like bring things to a market, to coin the right term, to present it in the right way, to sell it in the right way. Even if everyone like agrees, everyone has a job that they do day to day, and they think about the next thing that they actually care about. Who like the party this weekend, or like their kid needs help with homework or whatever it is. And so like it just takes time, I think, for society to kind of like accept something as like a new norm into, it just become kind of standard, like, the fitness industry has, or the nutrition industry has, or like, for instance, I think like meditation and like therapy went through this transformation over the last, decade or so, maybe even longer. And I think, it's just something that's gonna, to me, it's obvious. Like I said, 2.5 years ago is when we like first had the idea and like kind of started it. At first, everyone thought I was kind of crazy. Not honestly, not younger people. They like got it. But anyone who was like older investors like thought we were ridiculous when we first. I probably shouldn't say this, but one of our first investors, I won't say who, they only invested in us because they liked us, but they were like, no one cares about screen time.
Yeah.
Like no one cares about that. Now people are getting it. Like at least it's at the point where like people get it. I would say it's not like a huge monetary trend yet, but it's definitely like getting there. But yeah, it just takes time, you know.
Yeah, and that's a common piece of feedback that I get too from people where it's like, yeah, we all agree this is a problem, but will people actually pay to solve it? And I think you're
Of course they
starting to
will. This is like the
and I
like
hear people say no one's going to pay, and I'm like,
what?
I think that one, you're objectively wrong. Two, I think you'll start to see more. One, as it gets more tied into broader cohesive health, and we have some of the metrics to prove it. Two, as it starts to tap into some of those kind of like core psychological urges for acceptance and attractiveness by sexual partners, where I think there's this kind of meta trend of being offline is starting to be
A hundred
sexy, and
percent.
like having a high snap score is viewed as unattractive, and there's like trends of like me and a guy who has no Instagram. Like I think those are viewed as like these little funny memes, but they're actually really telling signs of where the culture and kind of broader meta of the problem is heading. And once it
Yeah,
starts to become unattractive, especially for younger people, no one's going to want to go and use that again. Like they
yeah,
want to get girls or guys, they want to, go out and have friends. And if you're seen as that person who is doing something that is viewed as conventionally unattractive, the same way that we saw this with smoking, I think naturally the trend
hundred
will
percent.
follow.
And that's how I see this evolving over time. Like one of the difficulties I think is with fitness, like your nutrition and working out. You get status immediately by looking good. There's attraction there, right? And so one of the things we're trying to figure out is like how do we let people project and like show off? And it seems shallow, but it's important. Like we're social creatures, we get validation and motivation from other people. One of the reasons why people want to be good people, why they want to be healthy, why they want to be fit, why they want to be smart, why they want to build companies, is because we're social creatures and we like that validation. How to get that validation to you, and if you can, people will pay for it. But even more simply, like just like take it like at the most basic thing. Like our average user, they reduce their screen time by 2 hours a day. Think of like what is our most valuable asset? Time, right? Like if people will pay for the most ridiculous things that don't even have a clear ROI, I feel like solving this problem is one of the few problems that you can actually draw a distinct productivity level ROI of how much time did you save.
100%. And I think the way that I've been thinking about it recently, and I've started workshopping this with people, and it's been getting some good feedback, is essentially the best way to stay off your phone is to design a life that is better than scrolling. And the
100%.
best way to go and design a life that's better than scrolling and build a really interesting life that gives you the freedom and the autonomy of time, freedom of money, a lot of these things that you might not have otherwise, is by experimenting, finding what you're really good at, better at than others, finding that zone of genius and doubling down on it. But the
Yeah.
only way that you can go and find that is to go and experiment. And the only way to experiment is to have free time. And the only way you're going to have free time is if you're not filling your free time with brain rot and scrolling and all of those things. And so
Yeah.
even on the coaching side and what we're working on with the cohorts, it's just as much as how do you free up your time and invest it into the things that truly light you up and will allow you to have some of that value creation, whether that's time creation, money creation, whatever that may be, so that you can build a life that you don't want to go and scroll on. And I
100%.
think that's what's starting to really resonate with people more than just like, hey, let's cut down screen time by some arbitrary amount.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like you hit on something that's super important. Like breaking these addiction and breaking the cycle is really the first step because it's what it allows you to do. If you go and you like, get off TikTok and then you just don't do anything else that fulfills you in your life, you're going to go right back to scrolling because you're going to try to fill the boredom. Now, breaking the addiction to start, I think, is super, super important because for two reasons. One, it frees you up time to do stuff, but also when you're not overstimulated with dopamine, you actually like see the wonder in every ordinary day task, or you basically don't feel as lethargic, and you get more motivation and more fulfillment over simple things that before basically feel unbearable because dopamine, it's like the motivator chemical in your brain. If you're overstimulated to like a certain threshold, small dopamine tasks will make you feel like basically pretty crappy. But so you need to keep scrolling to maintain that baseline. But if you have a lower baseline, then you'll feel motivated by simple things like it won't feel unbearable to like do the dishes or to fold your laundry or to like sit down and read a book. So it enables you both in time, but also really like neurochemistry wise to like feel fulfillment over more mundane things, even working out.
100%. I'm curious with the data that you can see from both just like first party speaking to people and then also just based on any usage data that you're able to share, what is kind of some of the habits that you didn't expect from people? Like if you were able to categorize certain like unexpected phone habits that you wouldn't have thought of before, is there anything that stood out there?
In terms of habits that they do once they get off their phone or on their phone.
I'd say on their phone, like in terms of just usage habits of like how deep the addiction goes, or if they're using it certain types of day, things like that.
Well, I think most of it's unsurprising. Like we can all imagine, but I will say some of the sad stuff is there are certain people, and I wasn't at this level. I think my addiction to technology was definitely impacted me in a long term sense where I felt like I was in the wrong career and I couldn't get out of it. I wasn't working out. I wasn't eating right. All these things, like the phone was kind of the keystone habit that like held me back from all those other positive things. That's bad, but some of the stuff that I've seen is people are worried about losing their job, right? A lot of remote workers basically are like, yeah, I sit at home, no one's watching me all day, so I just scroll TikTok and I literally get nothing done. And I'm 2 weeks late on this assignment, and I have a meeting tomorrow with my boss where I'm supposed to present it, and I've done nothing. So like that's an example. And then even more serious stuff where it's a similar scenario, but the person like they have a mortgage. And they're worried about if they lose their job, what that's going to do to like paying their mortgage. And I think these are very extreme examples. I think the vast majority of us, I would call it like the addiction to technology is not the same as heroin. It's not the same as gambling because it's much more, benign. I don't want to call it benign, but like usually it's something that builds up over time. And it's one of these things that like, it's like death by a thousand paper cuts. But for
Yeah.
some people, it can get very, very serious
Hmm.
that we've seen.
Yeah, I think also as that digitally native generation starts to assume more responsibility in society, like that's when you're going to start to
They're
see a
cooked.
lot of those. Yeah, they're cooked. That's where you're going to start to see a lot of those stories where I had someone reach out and they were like, I downloaded TikTok as a joke, in seventh or eighth
Yeah.
grade, and now I'm a rising senior in high school planning on going to college. I want to be a doctor, and I spend 9 hours on TikTok a day. And like,
Yeah.
I have all these grand ambitions, and I know that the habits that I have now will not serve me in this next stage of my life, but I don't know how to stop. And I think that that is not an isolated thing. Like, I think you're going to see that
Not at all.
very
No.
largely across a lot of different industries, the educators, the founders, the legislators, like all of these people for the most part that are coming from that next generation will have a very, very unhealthy relationship with technology. And I'm curious to see what those second order consequences are on birth rates, productivity, all of everything that
Yeah.
comes from that.
And what's interesting about the younger generation is we found they're like the most addicted, but they're also the ones that I think are starting to show the biggest signs of like, or at least pockets of certain pockets believe it's uncool, right? Like we have some high schoolers who like love our app, they love to compete, and they were, I try to talk to our users like once every week or so. They were just interesting anecdote. I don't know exactly what this means or like what it means for our society, but they said they try to flex on people by reading magazines, like
Mm.
physical things. And I'm just like, this is very interesting. Like, it's similar to the status games that we were talking about earlier, and how people want to project and they think the culture and the coolness is actually not being addicted to technology. So they're simultaneously the most addicted, the most ingrained, but I think they're also the most aware of
Yeah.
this stuff. Like, I'm late 20s, right? Like, I was like the youngest millennial, oldest Gen Z, like kind of the first to get this stuff younger, but it was when the feed ended, right? So like I had experienced this problem a lot, but I think this younger generation is going to have it even 10 times worse. And then when they hit that like the early 20s, mid 20s, that's when I think like when your brain fully develops, you realize, oh, I want a career. I want a good relationship. I can't just binge drink every weekend. You know, I actually need to take care of my health. That's when there's going to be a huge reckoning. And there's already been a huge reckoning. It's growing, but I think like it's just going to accelerate and accelerate more as this generation matures.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the everything that's old becomes new again. But I think in this case, because there is such a resentment for having grown up in that generation for a lot of people because they want to escape the social comparisons, the
Yeah.
endless dopamine loops, all of everything that comes with just growing up in a completely digitally immersed social media society. There is a large degree of seeking refuge in flip phones and magazines and other types of
Yeah.
more analog mediums that I think actually is very interesting and may even inspire some of the older generations to follow suit. So I want to switch
100%.
gears here and talk a bit about you specifically because I know I feel this firsthand as someone who's building something. I feel like I'm on a soapbox, telling everyone get off your phone, and then my screen time is sometimes not where I want it to be because I'm constantly on my computer, constantly on Zoom calls, whatever that
Yeah.
may be. So how do you structure the digital balance in your life, and are there any kind of triggers where you're like, all right, I should probably get up, touch some grass, take a walk? How do you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, one, it's a constant learning, right? You know, like just because I started this company doesn't mean that like I'm perfect. It is something I think, we're tempted every day, basically, right? Like it's always at your fingertips. And it's one of these things where it's like, for a long time, I didn't use Twitter at all because that was my like favorite app back in the
That's
day.
still my vice.
It's so good. It's so good. But the problem is it's not just the time that you spend on like some of it can be beneficial, right? Like I've like learned incredible things on Twitter and then I also use it um for distraction. Or it's also there's different habits with your phone that are detrimental. Like sometimes it's not necessarily the time. Like this goes back to screen time being an imperfect proxy. Like if you spend an hour on social media, but you look at it for 30 seconds every 2 minutes, that's probably not a great thing because you're constantly just being distracted, interrupted, and it's not deep. But if you want to sit down, go on Twitter, go through like all the bookmarks that you saved of interesting tweets, or for me, it's a lot of like growth hacks or, product stuff or like fundraising or new AI technologies and go through and read it for an hour. That's probably a way better use of your time. And so I think for me, I'm still learning, but like the number one thing I want to do is be intentional with my use. Like make sure what I'm doing on there is valuable and fulfilling. And that doesn't always mean that it needs to be to some end goal because I think a lot of us get too caught up in like the productivity optimization. But it's about recognizing that what you're doing on your phone it isn't necessarily taking away from the other value added activities that you want to do. So like for me, I don't look at my phone in the morning. That's like a big thing that I do. I try to wait at least an hour, and then I limit certain time on these apps to always under an hour at the very least, and I also limit the number of opens that I have for each of them. And then it's just like constantly reassessing, like, is what I'm doing on my phone like negatively impact me? I will say right now, I feel very good about where I am at with technology, and I think it's also something that, just taking a step back here, that like everyone is going to have a different goal, right? Same with nutrition, like in working out. Like for me, I try to hit the gym 5 days a week, but I'm not like trying to max out my bench at like 280 pounds and like consistently doing progressive overload, all this stuff. I just want to be active. I want to feel good about it, and I want to stay consistent so that I can build up that habit. And so everyone's going to be different, and so I'm kind of like, no, as long as you can assess and really be honest with yourself about like your goals and use of technology and being intentional, I think that's the most important thing.
For sure. And knowing that, because I agree with you, screen time isn't the best proxy and it doesn't account for nuance and using your phone like a tool. What are some of the questions that you ask yourself? And I don't know if you journal about this or talk to this out loud, or it's more just kind of internal monologue, but what are some of the things that you ask yourself to reflect and gauge on if it's where you actually want it to be in terms of certain apps that are making you feel a certain way, or if the content that you're consuming is, nutrient dense, as I like to say, or if it's brain rot, how do you think about that?
Truthfully, I don't like journal or reflect too much specifically every day about the technology usage. What I do is I always start with the end goal in mind. Like, what do I actually want to be doing? What am I trying to accomplish for the day? How do I want to be spending my time? And am I accomplishing those goals? And sometimes it's related to work, sometimes it's personal relationships, sometimes it's working out. And then it's understanding, is how I'm spending my time actually reflective of those goals, and sometimes it's social media, sometimes it's dating apps, right? I know that's a big one in New York.
Huge one. It's like a
Like,
full-time job.
yeah, exactly. And so it's starting with that end goal in mind, kind of going back to what we were saying, like it's not about getting off social media just for getting off of it. It's like recognizing how that impacts like what you actually want to do. And so for me, I just journal every day and I think about, one, I have my affirmations. I write down like what my plans are for the day, what my goals are, what I'm looking forward to, what I'm grateful for. And that kind of just sets me up, I think, for the day of being excited for it and keeping focus on that. I think, and I haven't developed like a full ideology that I can articulate around this, but I think it really just comes down to constantly reminding yourself of how you want to spend your time and what you actually want to be doing. And then the rest will flow.
Yep. Yeah, I wrote a blog post said your screen time starts with your calendar, basically. And I heard a
Yeah.
quote somewhere that was like, show me your calendar, I'll show you your priorities. And I think it's true. It's like if you kind of go and identify, what those core things are, and then actually make time on your calendar and schedule those things in, it's a lot easier to, fill a ton of empty space with a bunch of scrolling. But if you have a fairly time box calendar and you have a
Yeah.
real set agenda of what you want to achieve, in my experience, it makes it a lot easier to avoid those pockets of just like getting sucked in for 30 minutes.
100%. And keep a commitment with yourself. So like I'm at this point right now where like I don't really spend a lot of time scrolling during the day or anything like that. I think my biggest issue is like sometimes checking it during the day, like here or there, right? And is that bad? Probably, but it's not like a huge detriment in my life. But for people who actually like where I was when I first started this journey, it's a serious problem. Yeah, I think keeping that calendar and a commitment to yourself is like the most important first step to then recognizing like what, when you're spending time on social media, what is that directly impacting? You had this on the
Mhm.
calendar, you scrolled instead. So that's what you're missing out on.
100%. I love it. I am going to wrap up this portion, jump into a rapid fire segment. I'm going to ask you a handful of questions. You can give me a brief answer, one word, can go in as depth as you want, but they're all going to be under the bucket of digital wellness. So to kick that off, I want to ask you, what is the last app you've deleted from your phone and why?
Probably like one of the dating apps because
Not fed up with
got
it.
no time. Got no time for that.
Fair enough. You and probably everyone else that I've spoken to recently, it is
Yeah.
tough out in New York. Um,
Truthfully, I don't delete like social media too much because I have a good relationship. Like I really I didn't have it on my phone for the longest time, and then there was kind of a reckoning of like, okay, this actually it is some value because I'm not anti-tech. I'm not anti
yeah,
these
neither am I.
platforms. I think we can develop a healthy relationship with them. It's just being intentional with it. So I know a lot of our users, they delete social media, re-download, delete it, re-download. I'm not in that spot right now yet. It's more, yeah, the dating app got
I
me.
love it. Question two: if you had to disconnect completely for a month, what would be the first thing that you'd do?
Complete for a month. I'd probably go somewhere in nature or the beach. You know, make sure my surroundings like are peaceful and conducive to really having good introspection. If you're still in a stressful environment, if you're looking to like disconnect and really like dig deep or whatever you want to do, make sure that your surroundings kind of reflect that. So if I was taking a month off, I'd go somewhere cool.
Is that the plan post be present exit?
We'll
Full
see. We'll see.
unplug?
Yeah, we'll see. I'll definitely be doing that at some point. I also like New York. I won't lie. I enjoy it, but there was a time where I was very against moving here just because of the overstimulation. But I enjoy it now. But yeah, like definitely that will be a part of my yearly routine at least.
That's great. What is one piece of tech that you secretly love and one that you think it's overrated? This doesn't need to be an app, software, like this could be an appliance in your life, kind of broader scope of tech.
Okay, I'll start with the overrated one. All right, I don't the eight sleep. So I got an eight sleep because with my company for like we signed up for like a bank and they gave it to me for free. So I didn't pay for it myself, but I got it for free. And honestly, hasn't been that great
I
so
hate to
far.
hear that because I that's like of the few things that I really want. I don't consider myself like a fairly materialistic person, especially for these bigger purchases. But that's
Yeah.
like one that I've been saying like I might need to pull the trigger at some point, like next Black Friday. Why don't you like it?
I don't know. I just haven't noticed the difference. And I had trouble sleeping, both falling and staying asleep. And like maybe it's helped, but like it just like I still struggle with it. And I guess this is probably a problem with me, but I was looking for that silver bullet. I was like, oh, this is going to change everything,
Yeah.
But so that's just something recently that I was like, I definitely would not have paid 3 grand or whatever it was.
More. Plus a monthly subscription. That's why I
Yeah,
own it. Like that's
yeah.
crazy. To
So
pay a monthly subscription on your mattress is nuts.
yeah, and I hate to like trash talk them because I'm sure it's great tech. The company is I think sleep is super super important. I'm someone who really cares about that, especially someone who doesn't get like great sleep. But yeah, that's just something that recently happened. Honestly, I don't use a lot of tech, so like the best tech, I can't even think of anything that other than my phone.
Fair enough. That eight sleep one was good info
I
for
don't
me.
use
Like I said.
gadgets. Not a big gadget guy.
That's funny. I That's why it's like such a yin yang with what I'm doing now because I love a gadget. Like I
Yeah,
love like anything that comes out. I'm not necessarily gonna buy it, but like I want to go to the store and try it out and see. Like doing the Vision Pro demo was like my favorite thing that I did, last year. Even though I didn't
yeah,
get one because I didn't feel like spending 4 grand on it, I thought it was really, really cool.
yeah. I can see how it's cool. Yeah, for me, I don't know why. I just, I'm a simple man.
Hey, it makes sense. That's why you do what you do. All right, two more, and then you can go and tell people where to find you and be present. But what is one thing that you do every day that makes you feel more human?
Working out, I think it's super, super important.
Yep,
Something that I really neglected after I graduated college. Um, I think meditation is great, journaling is great. I do that. But like working out, I think if you don't work out and you claim to care about your mental health, like I'm telling you, this is like one of the phone is huge, and then working out is number two.
100%. To quote Drake, "Problems hit the gym, they all work out." It's true. Anytime I'm feeling like down, I'm stressed, whatever. It's crazy what lifting moderately heavy things or heavy things can do
Yeah,
to you.
or doing Soul Cycle.
That's true. Are you a Soul Cycle guy?
I used to be. I just joined. I upgraded from Planet Fitness to a nicer gym, so now I don't pay for additional classes and stuff.
Yeah.
But I used to love Soul Cycle.
Dude, those classes are hard. That and
Yeah,
like yoga, everyone's like, "Oh, yoga's relaxing." Like I'm gassed every time I do.
no,
I don't know
yeah,
if I'm doing it wrong, but I'm like completely dead every
yeah,
single time.
it's great.
All right, last question. If you had to use, and you said you don't really use much tech, so this might be a tough one for you, but if you had to use only one piece of tech for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Probably a computer. Like, is that an
Yeah,
answer?
that's
Like,
fair. That's valid.
yeah,
I try to get away. If I could like really, go completely off grid, I think it would be a Kindle for me. Like my girlfriend
yeah,
jokes that I have like my emotional support laptop because it's just with me at all times. And I feel like I've spoken to other founders and they're like, yeah, I can completely relate to that. But I do look forward to one day where I can just be, desktop only if I need to. Keep that in the office. That's the room where I go use the internet and then be completely untethered from my laptop. But I do not think that I'm anywhere near close there yet.
yeah. I feel like you have to reach a certain level to get to that point. Like, I don't know if you probably know Cal Newport,
Yeah,
but like he has like a whole room. It's the only place in the house that the internet works. I think you can get to a certain level, you can do that. In the meantime, it's about developing these like medium habits.
exactly. I saw something that just made me think of that, an app on Twitter yesterday that someone made where the content only loads if you go
I,
offline.
I saw that. Yeah, that was interesting.
I thought it was really cool. And then in the comments, I saw a someone linked to a magazine that was like very similar, where you can only view and read the content if you turned off the Wi-Fi on your computer. It was like an online magazine from like 2018. I
Interesting.
was like, damn, they were early on the wave.
Yeah, that's
It was really
cool.
cool. All right, awesome. Well, Jack, thank you for popping on. I appreciate all
Thank
the
you for having
insights.
me, man. This is awesome.
Tell the people where they can find you and be present.
Just go to the App Store and type in Be Present. Pretty simple. Download us. Don't download one of the competitors that maybe run ads on our name. Find us. And yeah, go to the App Store, get your screen time under control. Our average user reduces screen time by 15 hours in the first week. But like Randy said, it's the first step. We're still trying to figure out how to build a product that once you break your addiction, like how to encourage you to really dig deeper, figure out what you want to do with your life, because that's kind of the point at the end of the day. But if you're looking for that boost, the time limits don't really work. You're just ignoring them. Try out the app.
I love it. And I know that people both in the Reset 45 cohort and then also, just readers of the newsletter are already Be Present users. So I think they're going to be pretty psyched to hear from you on this one.
Awesome. Awesome. Well,
All right.
thanks, Randy. I
Cool.
appreciate it.
Yeah, likewise, man.